Hello, my name is David Schultz. This is Our Earth, its climate, history, and processes. In this lecture, I want to continue talking about supercontinents past and these cyclical formations of supercontinents that we saw in the last lecture. Now, this cycle is called the Wilson cycle. What is it? Well, we start out with a supercontinent. Let's say it's Pangaea, some 200, 300 million years ago. Now, the thick continental crust that exists under this supercontinent inhibits the heat flow from the Earth's interior, and this leads to the supercontinent to start doming, and this doming then leads to cracking, deformation, and eventual rifting. This rifting splits the continent, leading to the creation of new ocean crust in between. The oceans will then flood in between this, separating these pieces of a former continent into two continents. Now, as these continents start spreading apart from one another, eventually some other place on the planet has to have convergence. These plates are coming together. And in this case, there's an ocean plate being subducted underneath a continental plate, and this would create a volcanic island chain and eventually new land on the surface. And so as this island chain gets welded to the continent, we start forming more area of continent, and these are called terranes, Terrane, and this process of terrane accretion is how the continents grow in size over time. Now, eventually, the subduction closes up, and you have two continents colliding, forming an orogeny, thickening the crust, and building the mountains and forming a new supercontinent. So that's the Wilson cycle. We go from a supercontinent to rifting to subduction, eventually that subduction closing up the ocean basin, forming a new continent. So is there a modern analogy to this supercontinental rifting that broke up Pangaea? Well, the answer is yes. It's happening in East Africa along what is called the East African Rift Valley. This is a place where a continent is breaking apart, and volcanism and mountain building and the creation of new ocean crust is occurring. Here we see a geologic map showing basalts flooding into this weakened crust and the formation of ocean crust here in north of this rift valley. We also see volcanoes occurring, such as Mount Kilimanjaro. Looking back on this slide, we see this period of supercontinents occurring on the planet about every 500 million to billion years. This is the time scale of the Wilson cycle. That's how long it takes for a supercontinent to form, dome up, rift, pieces of continents be spread around the globe, reform back again into another supercontinent. So to summarize today's lecture, we saw that Pangaea is just one of several supercontinents that have existed on Earth in geologic time. We see that these cratons that serve as these continents grow into continents by accreting these new terranes along their margins. The rifting that starts the Wilson cycle is initiated by heat flow being inhibited from the interior, and this is due to the large mass of thick continental crust.